283 is good to go.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the House Housing Committee. We're going to get started with an exec session, but first, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I had noticed a number of bills that we've received from our friends in the Senate. I'm going to take them out of order because we were waiting for some amendments. So we might have to recess halfway through, depending on the speed at what OLS is dealing with. But so bear with me. I'm going to call these out of order. So the first, I'm going to open the exec session on SB 165 and recognize Representative Cole for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass on SB 165.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second by Representative Grant. Discussion?
No discussion.
Okay, real quick. I think this is going to save a lot of manufacturer co-ops some money with audit requirements. I think by, I think I asked during the public hearing, it's like $10,000 per audit. So if we can save them some money and keep their housing costs low, I think that's important. All right. Anything else? Okay. I did want to thank, I have a substitute clerk today. Representative Reinfeld's out. So thank you, Representative Paternell, for stepping in. I also have Representative Mazer and Representative Lane here as well as our committee substitutes. So welcome. With that, call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Yes.
Representative Thaxton. Representative Aaron.
Yes.
Representative Boulier.
Bollier. Yes.
Representative Mazer.
Yes.
Representative Grant.
Yes.
Representative Miles.
Yes.
Representative Minor.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page.
Yes.
Representative Boris.
Yes.
Representative Gibbs.
Not here.
Not here. Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Howland.
Yes.
Representative Hegner.
Yes.
And Representative Kerwin.
Yes.
15. Chairman Alexander.
Yes. Motion carries 16-0.
Thank
Any
you.
objection to this going on consent? Okay, we're going to put this on consent, and Representative Cole is responsible for the report. Next up, I have SB 166. I'd like to call on Representative Bolio for a motion.
I move ought to pass.
Ought to pass. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Aaron. Discussion on this, Representative Bolio? No. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me get to my notes here. So on this one, I think that it just really echoes the language of the Condo Act. So it's really just a way sort of harmonizing amongst the RSAs, the different disclosure requirements. And it actually gives an RSA that people can point to in the purchasing process when they try to get this information from an association. They can point to an RSA that says this information needs to be provided. So for that reasons, I think it's very common sense legislation.
Any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, I'll have the clerk call the roll when she's ready.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Yes.
Representative Thaxton.
Yes.
Representative Aaron.
Yes.
Representative Boulier.
Yes.
Representative Mazer.
Yes.
Representative Grant.
Yes.
Representative Miles.
Yes.
Representative Minor.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page.
Yes.
Representative Boris.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Howland.
Yes.
Representative Hegner.
Yes.
Representative Kerwin.
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes. All right.
Six-
Motion. Oh, go ahead.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 16-0. Any objection to this going on consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm going to have Representative Bolio write the majority report. Next up, I want to open up the exec session on SB 170 and recognize Representative Cole for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment. It is Amendment 2025-1948H.
So Representative Cole moves ought to pass and offers Amendment 1948H. Is there a second? Second by Representative Howland. Would you like to speak to this? I know we had a subcommittee too, so I want the subcommittee to have something with that as well.
We had a lot of emails about safety requirements on the length of the road, so we removed that section. We kept the here. Sorry. We kept the septic system requirements part of it. We removed the length of the road. I took out the word underground before utilities. There was some discussion about that, so utilities would be underground or above ground. And then we also had proposed language that we added in the last section, section number 4.
So I served on the subcommittee. I think we had some good changes made to this. Representative Cole added to those. First of all, section 1 is very important. We added under equal housing opportunity without discrimination, a civil right. We added a protected class of school enrollment status. This is to deal with the constant go-arounds going on in Durham, where we're prohibiting students from living together in certain parts of the zone, certain parts of their community. I think it's frankly discriminatory to tell people where they can live and where they can't live. So we're adding school enrollment status to that. And then additionally, some key components of this bill include not municipalities not being able to require more stringent test pitting requirements for septic systems other than what DES requires. We heard testimony from DES during the subcommittee about how their requirements are, they think, adequate. And I asked questions about if it's necessary to have additional requirements on the town level, and they said really no, because they have all their bases covered. And then we also added the language in section 4 about upon the conclusion of initial planning review, municipalities shall have 7 calendar days to adjust or alter their recommended changes, and then any recommended changes shall be offered to the developer. So it clears up this whole, oh, we're going to approve your plan, but you need to do this, and then the developer rewrites the plan, and then they come back to the next meeting and they said, oh wait, we need this too. And it's going to speed up the approval process and make it much easier for people, for developers or anybody that wants to build, to have clear expectations of what is needed for a plan, and get it approved in a timely manner. Anyone else from the subcommittee want to speak on this? No. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Howland.
So first of all, actually, believe it or not, I'm glad you did this student enrollment status, because it really what it is you just want to say if you allow lodging houses or you don't allow lodging houses. You can't, it turns out when we did do like student lodging houses, it's like your enrollment information is protected private information, and us trying to get your private information is not a great idea. So just having it lodging houses is the right way to do it. You either allow them or you don't allow it. And so we allow them, and we allowed the student lodging houses in certain zones where they make sense. Now we would just say lodging houses, just change it. So I think that's a good improvement. The other one, I'm glad that you took out the 75-foot frontage requirement, because we already passed in House Bill 410. We said the frontage was 200 square feet where you weren't on sewer and water, and then 50 feet if you're on sewer and water. So throwing 75 feet in conflicts with what we already passed. So it was a great, I mean, I think there's likely during next term, we're going to have a conversation about lot sizes and frontage again. So let's not make it more confusing. So I'm glad you did the amendment. Thank you.
Other discussion, Representative Page.
I think just for the record, I would love, on the well siting piece and the test pitting piece, I think I would hope we're all in agreement that those should not, those requirements should not be used as a growth management strategy, right? And I just would love for you to sort of reinforce the testimony you heard from DES and make sure I'm understanding you correctly, that they were very clear in saying that our requirements are sufficient. I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Absolutely, yeah. The DES, I had Rainey, I forgot his last name, from DES. He's been working for DES since like the 70s, and he has very well adept with this, and has stressed that the state feels like their requirements are adequate to provide safety, but also make sure that everything's followed. Yeah, they said it was adequate. Representative Hegner, yeah. Representative Aaron.
Just for the record, it's Rennie Pelletier.
Thank you, Pelletier. I forgot. I knew it was a French name. I just forgot. Any other? Representative Page.
One more question. On the 7 calendar days timeline, I just wanted input from the subcommittee on how we arrived at that number. I've heard folks saying sort of as a wish item that they wanted 45 days. I think that's not at all what we want. I think that's sort of exactly at cross purposes with what this provision is trying to achieve. I think we want a reasonable timeline that can be implemented on the ground. And I'm just wondering how the subcommittee arrived at that 7-day number. Is there anybody from the subcommittee who's willing to speak to that?
Well,
Representative Hegner, go ahead.
I guess we thought it would be enough time for someone to review what the builder wanted to do and get back to them with changes, because then it goes back and forth. If we keep giving longer times for them to even look at something, then by the time it gets back into the builder's hands, it's just going to keep prolonging this project over and over again. And we thought the 7 days, because if there was a holiday in that week, then it wouldn't impede that week. It would roll into the next week. So we thought that allowed plenty of days for an employee to look at the plans and to get back to the builder.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it originally was 5 business days, and I think we changed it to 7 calendar days to make clear that it's a week, no matter what is in the middle of that week. Representative Kerwin.
In our subcommittee, it came up that not every town meets every week. So I'm wondering if that just is going to be a problem, because we ended up doing 14 days, I believe, just 10 and 14, just because not every municipality meets every week. That sort of came up in our subcommittee. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, just to address that, this would be after a meeting where they had a review of a plan. So they would then know that they know they had the meeting, the 7 days starts right after that meeting. So it's not like there's going to be this mystery plan that they don't know about. Like, they know there's a plan set. They have 7 days starting that. So I think that that's enough awareness for the municipality. Representative Thaxton.
Well, I think and going to Representative Kerwin's point, I think the 7 days is fine with this bill. Coming out of our subcommittee, it's being on the receiving end of these rules, both as a developer and as a selectman. It's nice to have the clarity of calendar days, because you can't argue with it's been 7 calendar days. You can argue with whether Patriots Day was a holiday in Troy, but not in Fitzwilliam. And so therefore, where are we calendar wise? So I think calendar days on all of these things is actually a point of clarity and better than business days. So I wasn't working that day, so I guess we weren't in business. We don't count that day. So whatever.
Right. And there's some towns that are only open 2 days. So 5 business days turns into 3 weeks. All right. Any other comments on Representative Cole's amendment? All right. Seeing none. Oh, Representative Page.
I would request just a 1-minute caucus with the Dems just to make sure that they are ready
Sure.
to proceed.
All right.
We'll be quick.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
But I will take the opportunity to say this. We have to be out of this building on the 29th. So if you have stuff in your lockers or anything like that in this building, please take it home with you. And don't forget about our field trip next Tuesday. We're going to see the manufacturer of tiny homes here in New Hampshire. So that's going to be interesting. And let's see. Oh, the last thing I had was if you're writing a committee report today, can you please have it to us by Wednesday tomorrow? Thanks. You didn't know?
I just wanted to, you said the tiny home builder in New Hampshire, but one of the, because we have one in Richmond as well. So, who's apparently doing great guns.
Oh, all right.
All right, I'm going to reopen the executive session on SB 170. We were currently at discussion over Representative Cole's Amendment 2025-1948H. Is there further discussion on this amendment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to have the clerk call the roll on the amendment.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay. Amendment's been adopted. We're now on the final ought to pass as amended motion. Is there discussion on that? Okay, so the vote is ought to pass as amended by amendment number 1948H. We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 16-0. Is there any objection is going on consent calendar? All right, it's going to go on consent calendar. Representative Cole is responsible for the report. Great. Next up, I'm going to call on SB 282 and recognize myself for a motion. I move ought to pass, and I move amendment number 1701H. Is there a second on that?
I second.
Second by Representative Page. Well, in the spirit of bipartisanship. Great. So motion and second on this amendment. This is mainly an amendment that would replace the bill to address the concerns the fire marshal raised with 5 and 6 floors, but it would allow single stairway up to 4 floors. I believe the fire marshal is working on a plan to get to 5 or 6 floors. They just want to make sure that they're doing it correctly and safely. I believe the fire marshal, and I believe that they'll work to get there, but I think 4 floors is a reasonable step forward to save costs on stairway requirements. So this would just go to 4 floors. Any other discussion? All right. Do we need to show it? Okay. All right. We'll have the clerk call the roll when you're ready. On the amendment.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
All right. We're now on the final ought to pass as amended motion on SB 282. Any discussion on that? All right. When the clerk's ready.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin, and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 16 to 0. Any objection is going on consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll go on consent calendar and I'll write the report for that. Next up, I want to call on SB 283 and call on Representative Kerwin for a motion. When you're ready. That's okay.
So, do I say a motion, what the amendment was?
You want to move ought to pass and move your amendment number.
Okay, I'd like to move ought to pass on the amendment 283. And what I did in that amendment was really when we were listening to the
Okay,
testimony.
one sec. So
Oh,
Representative Kerwin moves ought to pass and moves amendment 2025
okay,
1596H.
okay. Representative Curran, I move ought to pass on amendment 2025-1596H.
Is there a second to that? Second by Representative Boris.
Thank you.
Now you may speak to your motion.
Oh, okay. So when we were listening to the testimony, they just suggested, if I can remember correctly, removing lines 18 to 21 because that actually is not what the planning board and zoning boards do. And then just for clarity, to strike 21 and 22, the height limitation. So that's what the amendment does.
Great. Other discussion on this? All right. Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Yes.
Representative Thaxton, Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Amendments adopted 16 to 0. Representative Kerwin moves ought to pass with amendment number 1596H, seconded by Representative Boris. Is there any more discussion on the bill as amended? All right. Seeing none, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 16-0. Is there any objections going on consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll put it on consent. Representative Kerwin, can you write the report? I will have Representative Page assist you with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next. Yep, no problem. Not yet. I want to do 174. He was waiting. Do we have it yet? Yes. What about this one? We're waiting for that too. Yeah. You ready? Okay, next up, I want to open up the exec on SB 174. And Representative, did you pass around your amendment?
I did.
I don't have it, so maybe maybe I do have it. Oh yeah. Okay. No, I don't. I want to recognize Representative Howland for a motion.
I would like to make a motion to pass Amendment 1639H.
Okay, Representative Howland ought to pass and moves Amendment 1639H. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Representative Page. You can speak to your motion.
Okay, so when we did, when originally Senate Bill 174 came in, the allegation was that some municipalities were limiting the number of bedrooms and discriminating. And so what came up was, as long as you met sewer and water requirements, you could do it. You weren't using bedrooms. And so a municipality still has like uses and all that would still be in place. And so that was my original wording. I went to New Hampshire planning and asked them to clarify it with the RSAs, and they came up with this. And so the language in essence just says that as long as the municipality does the calculation and shows that you can meet sewer and water, you can do it. And it's a little more wordy than my short one, but it has the references to RSA 485, which is the state DES permitting.
Okay. Discussion on this amendment? Representative Aaron.
I have a little problem with the definition of a bedroom. I think a bedroom needs to have a closet. That is one of the things. We had a guy in town whose house burned down, and he built his house with no closets to keep the real estate taxes down, because that meant he had no bedrooms in his house. So you have to say that it has a closet.
I'm sorry. Go
We
ahead.
were discussing before, just take that bedroom definition out completely.
Okay, so the only reason I put the bedroom definition came from New Hampshire planning. That's how they define bedroom. So I used their definition so it was consistent across the way. But I don't have a problem with adding closet if you would. I mean, I don't think it's going to make a difference, but if you really wanted me to, I could write an amendment to put closet in there.
I mean, I just brought it up. If everyone thinks this is fine, then
The only reason I did with this one is because this is consistent with the language in the state. So if you're, hopefully a developer, please put closets in. People need them.
Representative Daxton and then Representative Lane.
I think that the myth of a closet is sort of an urban legend. It's not actually in statute. And if you look at a significant number of houses in our state, which are over 150 years old, if the rule was it has to have a bedroom, we have a lot of houses without bedrooms. I mean, if the rule was the bedroom has to have a closet, we have a lot of houses that don't have bedrooms. So I think the state statute as it exists is written the way it is written to take that into account. And I think we're good with the amendment as it sits. That's my personal opinion.
Representative Lane.
I know I'm just subbing, but I
okay.
was going to say the exact same thing, that there's a lot of older homes without a closet, having lived in several and had to buy an armoire. So, and also it says unless otherwise specified by local regulations. So if the local regulations require a closet, wouldn't that be then included? So we don't really need to change, I think, the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Bolio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also keyed in on the unless otherwise specified by local regulations, but I actually take the opposite tact with it, which is we've included, a definition here to harmonize things, and then we just open up the door again to where every single town then can have their own definition, and we've completely removed all the uniformity or the entire purpose of defining a bedroom in the first place. So I would be much happier just completely striking out that clause that says unless otherwise specified by local regulations and actually have a uniform definition.
What does the committee think?
I mean,
Representative Howland?
again, I tried really, really hard to use the Office of Planning and to clarify it, and I'm hopeful that this does it. I thought it was better than what I was going to come up with, which was just as long as it meets sewer and water, you can do it. And I think that they were just trying to put some protective language in it. So I'm fine with the way it is, but if you asked me to change it, I would.
Representative Bolio.
Another thing I wanted to point out is that, I mean, if it doesn't meet DES requirements, it doesn't meet DES requirements. So, I mean, the project wouldn't be approved for that reason. So, I mean, I think although it's nice to, have it here, because I think, that was in testimony, one of the fears that we heard was about, well, water sewer capacity. If it's if it has if it's going to try to create a development that's going to cause a water supply or sewage issue, it already wouldn't be approved under DES requirements. So I think it's also a little bit redundant to mention it here, but I think maybe clarifying that is, to the purpose of the amendment, I think that's fine. But I really, really don't like that, unless otherwise specified by local regulations.
Representative Kerwin.
I guess building codes does not require a closet for a bedroom under RSA 155-A. So
Okay. Representative Thaxton.
Well, just since we're down the rabbit hole, if you, let me say, I believe that we should pass the amendment and then the bill as amended. If the closet or something else proves to be a catastrophic problem, we can deal with it in another session, but this is fundamentally a helpful and good bill. The issue I wanted to bring up is if we were going to go down the rabbit hole of closets, then you would have to define what a closet is. Is it a 36-inch wide by 9-inch deep room with a door on it? Because that is what closets are in many pre-1900 houses. Or do you have to meet modern code and be 24 by 36 on the inside? So I don't really think we want to go down that rabbit hole. I think this is a good amendment. It's a good bill. If it proves to have technical problems down the road, I'm sure looking at this room, there are a number of people who will give us our input next year. That's my thoughts.
I'm inclined. I actually would support scratching that, but I'm also inclined to just send it as is. I think it's a well-drafted amendment. So I'm going to support the amendment in the bill, but I'm looking at Phil Sherman and all my friends over there. I'm sure they'll let us know if there's some issues with that. We can address that next year as well. Representative Bolio.
I would just say that I definitely don't want to go down the rabbit hole of defining closets, and I definitely don't want to get into that. I personally, with that language in there, I would vote against the amendment, but I think the underlying bill is definitely a good bill.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll have the clerk call the roll on the amendment. It's amendment number 1639H. The second was Representative Boris, right?
Correct.
No,
Oh,
Representative Page.
Page.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
yes, and I was just starting the discussion on the bedroom. I like the way it went. So thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
Representative Bollier,
No.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
15 yeas, 1 nay.
Amendments adopted 15-1. We're now on the ought to pass as amended motion. Discussion on that. Representative Bolio.
I was just gonna say, now that it's amended, I mean, I look forward to all the town planning board discussions about whether or not a closet is part of a bedroom. But that being said, I am in favor of, I think even as amended, this is still a good bill. So I look forward to supporting it.
Great. All right. Seeing no other discussion, I'll have the clerk call the roll when she's ready.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 16-0. Is there any objections going on consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll put this on consent. Representative Howland, you're responsible for the report. As we sit right now, we're waiting for amendments for SB 163, SB 188, and I believe Representative Page wants to caucus on SB 281. Is that correct? Okay, so at this time, we're going to be in recess until 11 o'clock. We're waiting on a couple amendments, and then I'll give you my Democrat colleagues an opportunity to get together. So we'll be in recess until 11. All right. It is 11 o'clock. It is 11 o'clock. I'm going to open up the executive session on SB 281 and recognize Representative Bollier for a motion.
I move ought to pass.
Representative Bollier moves ought to pass, seconded
Second.
by Representative Cole. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think this bill that our colleagues in the Senate sent us has a couple good things about it. I would like to note that it has bipartisan sponsorship, and I'd also like to note that this bill allows for building on Class 6 roads, which was already allowed under our current RSAs, but this kind of tightens it up a little bit, cleans it up a little bit. And I would also like to point out historically, all roads were privately maintained. That's part of the rural character and the rural heritage of our state. So this comports with that. One of the things that's interesting about this is it actually adds an additional requirement that's not required under current RSAs. So under this bill, someone could build on a Class 6 road if they took responsibility for maintaining it, if they signed a liability waiver, if that was recorded with the Register of Deeds, so that way any purchaser in the future is on notice about that. But it actually, and also to issue a building permit, you actually have to prove that the lot and the buildings are insurable, which is not a current requirement. So under the current requirements, planning boards could actually allow people to build in lots or in ways which are uninsurable, and this would actually tighten that up. So for these reasons, I moved ought to pass.
Other discussion on this? Yeah, it was seconded by Representative Cole. I think this is a great bill. I think it actually protects the rural character of New Hampshire by allowing people to do what they want. I mean, back in the 1800s, there wasn't any people had their own roads and they had their own buildings on their roads, and there's no sort of approval. So this is a great bill to keep the rural character of New Hampshire. And so I'm very excited to vote for this. All right. Seeing no other comments, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton, Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bullier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
17 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries 17-0. Is there any objection to this going on consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll put it on consent. Representative Bollier, you're responsible for the report. So with that, we're waiting on two amendments. We're waiting on amendment for 163 and 188. I do not plan on calling an executive session on SB 84 today. So other than that, we're waiting for those two amendments that I believe are in final approval. So we're going to be in recess till 11:30, which hopefully at that time we can take up the last two votes. And so take a walk or get some food or something, but we'll be adjourned till recess till then. All right, we are back. We have two more bills to exec out of this committee. I'm going to open up the exec on SB 163, recognize myself, and I move ought to pass and offer Amendment 2025-1950H. Is that seconded by
Second.
Representative Reed? Discussion on this. Representative Page, this is your amendment. Would you like to speak to it?
Sure. Yep. I think this does two things. One is it rearticulates the House position regarding manufactured housing. It restates the bill we passed previously verbatim. I think everybody agrees that this was one bill on which we were all pretty enthusiastic across party lines. So this rearticulates that, and then it takes the original language of SB 163 and it narrows its scope. I feel I couldn't vote for the bill as it originally came over. We have used this statute effectively in my town, and it was the complete repeal included all kinds of development. This tailors it more narrowly, so it's only applying to housing development, the use of that moratorium. So that's my summary of what we're doing here. I'm happy to discuss further.
Just to add to that, I think it's important that we reiterate our position on HB 685. So that's in there. It's up for a floor vote in the Senate on Thursday, but I want to make sure that there's another avenue to get this bill signed into law if it doesn't happen to win the day on Thursday. So that's the only reason I asked Representative Page to put that in this amendment. But I also support the bill as amended if the amendment's adopted. Other discussions? All right. Seeing none, we'll have the clerk call the roll on the amendment. It's 2025-1950H.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
Are you sure it's 16 or
17,
17?
sorry.
Okay, motion carries 17-0. Amendments adopted. We're now on the ought to pass as amended motion. I made the motion ought to pass, seconded by Representative Reed. Is there any more discussion on this bill as amended? All right, seeing none, we'll have the clerk call the roll when she's ready.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
17 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries 17-0. Any objections going on consent? Seeing none, we'll put it on consent and I'll write the report. All right, the last bill that we have is SB 188. I'm going to call on Representative Thaxton for a motion.
I move that the amendment 2025-1951H ought to pass.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Aaron. Motion by Representative Thaxton ought to pass. He moves amendment 2025-1951H, seconded by Representative Aaron. Representative Thaxton, would you like to speak about this and what happened in the subcommittee?
Yes, in the subcommittee, we heard from the New Hampshire Building Officials Association, the New Hampshire Home Builders Association, the Seacoast Code officials, I think that's what that was, and the Association of General Contractors of New Hampshire. And we received significant input, and the primary achievements of the subcommittee were in amending the bill, were to preserve local oversight this bill as amended allows local officials to retain the authority to approve private providers. We corrected some of the code terminology so that we believe it is all code compliant language. And we clarified business days, as what we discussed in the earlier session today, with part-time building officials and varying closed and open days. So we went to a calendar days model. We clarified the audit compliant process, referring engineers and architects potentially to their licensing boards, certified building officials to the Building Code Review Board. We standardized the fee reductions as fixed percentages. These were actually modeled after the City of Keene system. Yay, Monadnock region. And we extended timelines. We adjusted them slightly. We extended them, did I say that? And we would like the effective date to be upon passage. The primary function is to direct the Building Code Review Board to amend the existing code. A delayed effective date is unnecessary under the structure and probably counterproductive. So those are the highlights. There were some Scribner's errors that we corrected as well, where the verb and the subject did not agree, but we won't get into that.
Well, I'm glad you're well versed on English grammar. So thank you for that,
I
Representative.
can't take credit for that, but
Oh, okay.
I knew what they were talking about.
Okay. Other discussion on this? Representative Page.
I just want to thank everybody who participated in this subcommittee and also all the stakeholders who came to the table in a proactive way and saw what the goals of the legislation were and said, let's make this the best possible bill it can be. I think that's how we get our best work done here. So I really appreciate that people came to the table in that spirit of let's get something done and let's fix the problems that we see. So I just want to say thank you both to the stakeholders and to the folks who participated in the subcommittee, because I think it was a lot of hard work to get it right. So thank you.
Yeah, just to echo Representative Page, I think this is one of the single biggest things we can do this year to help with the housing crisis is speeding up some of these inspections and approvals. And I think that was part of the reason why this committee was formed. So thank you, Representative Thaxton and the other members of the subcommittee. All right, seeing no further comments, I'll have the clerk call the roll on the amendment. It's 2025-1951H.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hegner,
Yes.
Representative Kerwin,
Yes.
Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
17 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, amendment is adopted. We're now on the ought to pass as amended motion with amendment 2025-1951H. Is there discussion on this final motion? Representative Thaxton.
As I come from a small town, and many times small towns have different challenges and problems from the larger cities in the state. I think that if you look at this bill and understand it, this is very balanced, and it is helpful to both small towns who have no building compliance and no building inspectors, as well as large cities like Manchester and Concord, where you have staff, but they may not have the skill level or the availability to effect the needed inspection. So I strongly support this bill, and I think it's actually echoing Representative Page's comments. This goes a long way towards problem solving statewide in municipalities of all sizes, shapes, and forms.
All right. Seeing no other, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Vice Chairman Cole,
Yes.
Representative Thaxton,
Yes.
Representative Aaron,
Yes.
Representative Bollier,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Grant,
Yes.
Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Minor,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Boris,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Howland,
Yes.
Representative Hagner.
Yes.
Was that a yes or no? Yes? No, oh, sorry. Representative Kerwin
Yes.
and Chairman Alexander.
Yes.
17 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion is adopted 17-0. Objection is going on consent. Seeing none, we'll put on consent. Representative Thaxton, if you'll write the report, and I know it's a rather long bill, so a longer report may be necessary. But you have a couple days to handle that. So I want to thank this committee. We just got through a number of bills that were sent to us. And I think we got to consensus on almost all of them that were sent to us from the Senate. So I want to thank the committee. This is about the last of our business until we deal with retained bills. We have a field trip next week, and then I have one bill, SB 84, that I'll have to call an executive session at some point on or before May 29th, and that may be during a session day or it may not be. It's one bill, so I wouldn't want to drag the committee here for one bill. So with that, I'll see you all inside a tiny home next Tuesday. All right, thank you.
Can my Joe? Can my elderly mom and I go with you guys? We want to see tiny houses.
Yeah, any member of the public's welcome to come.